Hello and welcome to another WeAreDevelopers Live. I'm here with Dan and I'm here in my kitchen for a change because I got feedback that I looked crap in my other room. So I basically set up everything here right now. So I feel like I'm being interviewed in my own house, which feels odd. But yeah, what can you do? And now I have to put like random music instruments behind me as well. I thought about a harp or a bagpipe or tuba, something like that. How are you today, Danny?
I'm all right. Yeah, I'm very well. I'm actually considering the next instrument that I'm going to get behind there. I should be getting another one actually. I've found a mysterious bass that I somehow lost when I moved house, and a friend messaged me and said, "I think I've just found your instrument in my garage about 3 days ago." So yeah, I'll have a new one soon.
I had that 4 years ago where somebody told me that when I left Germany before I moved to England, that I actually left a Commodore 64 in her basement, like the old computer. And that was in 1999. So she kept it for like 20 years before telling me that it's still there. So still haven't picked it up, but it might be a thing to do soon. So it's fun that people keep things for you and you're just like, it's good to have. I think having a small flat is beneficial as well because you cannot accumulate a lot of stuff that you don't need anymore. That's the other problem. Talking about accumulating lots of stuff, we got a guest today again as well, and the guest is Peter Kröner. And how are you doing, Peter?
Hi, great, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. So what do you do, Peter, that we got you here?
Well, I obviously don't collect musical instruments. I'd like to have a pipe organ back there. That would be fun.
Oh yeah.
Proper sinister, and you can wear like a big like a cape and and go,
yes, indeed.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah.
Okay. Apart from bullshitting, I'm not a real developer. I mostly do trainings and workshops on fundamental web technologies. And apart from that, I'm just mostly posting online about said web technologies, bashing legacy frameworks, that sort of thing.
Interesting. So what made you choose the posting route rather than just the posting route and being an influencer?
There's many influencers. There's not that many shit posters. And, you know, it comes natural to me. I mean, I talked about putting a pipe organ back there. And, you know, if you're a real influencer, you have to somehow tie your identity to, I don't know, some sort of product, some sort of framework or a way of doing things. And I like to be independent and choose my own adventure every time I feel like it.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. In terms of like, you have Sir Pepe as your handle in a lot of places. Did that get you into trouble when people started using that Pepe the Frog thing? And like, did you get contacted by people that are less sanitary?
In a way, actually. I mean, I left Twitter before it was cool, actually. And that happened on during a conference when somebody told me, hey, if you delete your Twitter account, I'm going to fetch you a beer. And so I deleted my Twitter account and got a beer in exchange. But actually deleting your account is kind of a bad idea because then the name is available for grabs. And then Pepe the Frog person actually came along and took it and now uses my name to spew Nazi propaganda on Twitter, which isn't great, but there's nothing I can do about it. So, you know, kind of. Don't delete your account. Delete everything else, but keep your account just for this reason.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of these social media platforms will now say, like, if you haven't used anything or haven't done anything in like years, then it automatically gets deleted. I had that with a Yahoo account after 15 years of not doing anything with it. Mind you, that's actually a nice grace period. But like, I thought Twitter said like they're gonna do, or X said like they're gonna do it with half a year. That basically they just purged a lot of like inactive accounts and gave them away to other people. So. Yeah, it's an identity theft idea if you think about it. You know, it's a
I mean, Twitter is a lawless wasteland anyway, so no matter what you do, you're gonna get screwed.
Okay, so much for monetizing this edition. So let's take a look at some of the resources that we collected over the last few weeks that didn't get into the newsletter. So one of the things that I found interesting was that somebody asking, like, now that anybody can use AI to build anything, how do you stand out as a developer? Like, how do you actually make sure that when you build something that people realize that you're an expert, that basically people do it? I'm not sure I feel that anger, or I feel that worry because we always had that worry. Like when I said I was a HTML developer or a front-end developer, people said my cousin's son has Dreamweaver and can do it cheaper. Feels like that still, doesn't it?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, like, I've got a bunch of beef with this article in particular, but if we scroll down to the actual things that this guy recommends that we should do, this still looks like a whole lot of work. Like, craft and polish isn't exactly something that you do, while you're doing, I don't know, laundry or whatever. Like, this is actually hard, and communication skills, figuring out what to do, business literacy, kind of, for many technical people, probably the biggest hurdle. So I don't quite get the problem too.
What about you, Dan? Do you feel like that it's harder to actually to stand out? I mean, we talked about that earlier, offline, basically, or not offline, but online, but without being live. That there's this great YouTube channel called Kurzgesagt, which is like 5-minute introductions of like very complex topics, and they said like it's really hard to actually get your really research content. It takes about 200 hours to make a 5-minute video for them to actually just be seen, because everybody else is drowning in AI-generated nonsense.
Yeah, I definitely think there's something to that idea of kind of standing out. I mean, I think that the spirit of this topic is onto something, in the sense that we were talking about it, Chris, of how, if you go back to the early web, before you had things like maybe Bootstrap or kind of Tailwind, quote unquote standardizing things, but I understand there's benefits to it, but what it really resulted in was you go on a website and you can see this is Bootstrap, this is Tailwind, this has got a certain look. And then there was the sort of what's the word I'm looking for, boilerplate era last year, where we saw everything looked like I think it was Shipfast, the kind of big boilerplate that was selling a lot. Now we're seeing I actually saw it where somebody had shared something, and I realized they'd shared a pricing component. And when I had made like a very quick one the day before, the copy that it had written for you was exactly the same. And so I realized, oh, these people are sharing things going, look what I've made, feeling like it's original. And it's not. They just haven't seen enough of everybody else's to realize that it's all the same. So yeah, it feels a little bit like they're going, none of this is important anymore, but actually it is, because we get bored of seeing, I miss the sort of artistry of going on somebody's site and feeling like, oh, I know a little bit about them from how they have decided to build this, rather than AI did it for them, it's impersonal and it's got their name at the top.
But that's two different problems, I think. One is like standing out with the artistry and having a distinct design, and the other is discoverability, which is probably what the Kurzgesagt video was about. I mean, also fighting from a losing position by doing actual research, but discoverability and standing out, I mean, both help if you want to get your product in front of users, but it's still two different things, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the other problem is like, what does standing out mean? Does standing out mean that basically you do the job and you don't have to do it again because you did it right the first time? Or does standing out mean that you get applause for doing something amazing and cool that basically is there? I think it's fun how these show-off platforms die really quickly. I mean, my favorite is like Product Hunt used to be this amazing thing, and now it's almost like embarrassing for people to go on there and basically do that. Like, it feels like pushing your product rather than just like, okay, it's a JavaScript, dude. It's like, it's an NPM package. Okay, you did a landing page for it and put a product in, but nobody's going to give you $1 million for that. So it feels like the focus on the success of it, rather than focus of like the usability of it or the sensibility of it, is something that I found really a fool's errand anyways.
And when's the last time that you wrote any article this long without putting in any link or any citation to substantiate any claim at all?
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
that's quite the achievement.
Well, it feels to me like platforms like I always ranted about things like other platforms that had lots of links in their text, but they're all links to other parts of their content. Like, that's the other part where it's basically like Microsoft said, and it's just basically going to a news article 3 months later where they talked about Microsoft before. So I'm like, make it worthwhile for me to see a link to validate the bit, but I guess we're past that phase anyway. So validate it. Why would you? Like, I mean, other people try to replace Wikipedia with their own AI generated thing because they disagree with the content that it has. So I'm not sure. Talking about annoyances, the European Commission GDPR modification seems to be like that we don't need to have cookie banners soon again. I'm not sure, I didn't quite read it, but it's like I always found them kind of like, yeah, they turned to banner blindness. People didn't bother to actually understand why there was a cookie consent, but rather than like that there was one, and got super annoying for people. So, and I always thought they should, when you localize them to England, they should be biscuit consents, but like we never did that.
I
Did
mean,
you
it's
have
not
to
just banner
implement it?
blindness. You have browser extensions that hide them, and you can have filter lists for your ad blocker to hide them as well. Auto consent, the other approach. So it's more than just blindness on the side of the people. And I think, if I remember correctly, I'm not an expert, but I think these cookie banners, as they are implemented today, are sort of a kind of malicious compliance anyway, that they are not really required by the legislation, but just the most annoying way to comply, if I remember correctly.
Well, I think you have to do the much like you have to put like the impressum thing in Germany, like basically who's behind the website, and also to have somewhere in your footer a text saying that third-party links that you link to are not your jurisdiction. I've never seen anybody being sued over that, but it seems to be a thing that people need to do.
I'm pretty sure that if you only have functional cookies that are like required to get the website working without any tracking, third-party scripts or whatever, then you don't, because there's no way in your classic cookie banner to reject the functional required cookies anyway. All you can reject are third-party cookies, and if you don't have third-party cookies, you don't need the banner.
I don't have anything with cookies on any of the things that I built, so I never understood that anyways. Like I don't do tracking on my blog. I don't do anything. I basically I don't want people to log into my blog, so I don't need cookies. And it feels like what are functional cookies? What functionality is based on cookies unless there is a login and personalization?
For example, I mean, that's not exactly rare, right?
Yeah. I think that's the bit, like when you want people to log in and you want their email anyways, then you might as well have to do that. But yeah, it feels that that cookie consent thing. My favorite are the ones that actually have like a form that is then like a Matryoshka doll. That is a form that goes into more things and more things. You get these like really, really detailed forms about what you want to say yes or no to. And you're like, I don't have time for this. Like, yeah, take them all. It's going to be fine. But it's interesting
As I
how
said,
GDPR
it's
is
malicious
changing.
compliance. If you really want to explain the concept of malicious compliance to anyone nowadays, just take cookie banners as an example.
DigitalOcean of all people talking about cookie banners. Excellent. Had this interesting article about how to actually put AI generated code into a open source project. And I had that with a few of the projects that I work on, that it's just super annoying that people vibe code like 6,000 lines of code in 5,000 files and just put them into one PR. And I think that's something we really need to start teaching people, that like it's good that the machine created a lot of code for you, but I have no idea how much of that is malware. And see, so the housekeeping bit of PRs has been completely out of the window since we have these code generators, right?
Kind of like they don't actually save work, but they move work around so that other people have to put in the work. Sort of.
Yeah. Or you have like a CI/CD that basically reviews it and deletes everything again. Or I find like, yeah, it seems like the fast generation of things means we have to do more computation on the contribution end to actually make sure everything is safe. So
yeah, and I don't even know if this is actually like possible. I mean, the article sounds to me like they propose, disclose your AI tools. That's fine. And review everything. But review everything kind of is just like, pay attention, dumbass, which is not exactly a guardrail. Like a guardrail is a physical guardrail, and if your only guardrail is pay attention, then you don't have any guardrails, in my opinion.
I think this is kind of a basic, like pay attention when you write code is probably a good idea. Like, it's
yeah, that's what. I mean, that's
just
kind of what
doing
Gandhi said about Western civilization, right? It would be a good idea.
Yeah. I think, Chris,
really
just to
odd.
say that really links in with that next article about the pull request
Yeah.
templates. Yeah, because it's surprising. I think they did give a number, didn't they? The number of people that are actually using it, or the percentage. It's basically a small minority from what I remember. Which is, I mean, it's a feature that I think is pretty useful, if I'm honest, because especially when, you know, I've got a sort of small project that I maintain, and yeah, the shapes and sizes you get PRs in, and it really affects your how likely you are to go and sort of, you know, if you see a massive pull request and like you're saying, it's quite messy, it could have some great features in there, but it's just so much work to actually bring it in that standardization at the point of them actually submitting the PR would have just been that probably a little less friction for me to actually, you know, then bring that into the main project.
We tried that. I mean, it probably works on a open source project of a single developer or a small thing. We had them at Microsoft when I worked on the dev tools, and basically we put templates in because we got about 1,400 a week pull requests and stuff. So we had to find a way to actually parse those quickly before we had AI to do it. And yeah, people didn't pick them. They just basically verbatim put them in there and wrote on top of it, doesn't work, can fix, please. So it's a matter of like, yeah, I think you can overdo it. You can make them too complex, I guess. But yeah, definitely giving people a chance to say like, hey, if you do your feedback, if you phrase your feedback in a certain manner, we can act faster to it. It's probably a good thing. The same with like CFPs for our events, for example, when we tell people like, this is the kind of like a description of a talk we expect and not your life story. But yeah, don't overdo it with the request templates. But I think it's interesting that now somebody comes up with that thing, because that has been a feature for decades in like GitHub, and I don't know how GitLab does it or other platforms, but it's always been useful. It feels weird though, like you do a pull request, you normally just write something in there, but like having to fill that in feels like don't know. I mean, Peter, you're probably one of those guys like, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm painted an elephant instead, or whatever.
Well, I'm not even a real developer, so I wouldn't know how to do a pull request. But I mean, it's kind of the same as with the AI checklist for contributions. It at least, you know, gives you a structure to think about it, and it might feel like a stupid bureaucracy, but it might also catch a few errors. Kind of like, you know, pilots who fly airplanes all day still use checklists so they don't forget the one important step. Seems reasonable, even if it's probably annoying when you actually get down to doing it.
True. Same with like the safety announcement on the plane. You're like, yeah, I've flown before. I know that basically it's like, yeah, by the time we're done landing on the water, none of this will matter. But like, yeah, it's it's an interesting thing that like repeating those things makes it muscle memory, and then people don't have to think about it anymore. That might be one way of doing it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're on the plane, I feel like at least checking for the nearest exit is probably not the worst idea, unless you always book the same seat on the same type of airplane.
Yeah, be faster than the slowest people around you and these kind of things. Like, yeah.
Well, maybe like this, or maybe you don't hold up the entire process yourself, right?
Oh God, yeah. Like when people stand up in the middle of the thing and they're basically like, yeah, I'm the first one to stand up and now I'm in the way of everybody else. And you're like, no, just go by rows. And like, you know, that there was research that like filling every third row and letting people in at every third row would make the plane much faster, so people are not in each other's way trying to put things up in the compartments and things like that. But there's just no way of doing that, because people want to be the first one to be in there, no matter what, no matter how.
Well, that, and you would also have to rip families apart and so on. So this won't really work.
That's true. I mean, that was the big outrage in Germany with the trains, wasn't it? That yeah, in the past, families could go on one ticket, and now all of them have to buy singular tickets. And I didn't even know it was a thing that basically families could have a family ticket. But it seems like, yeah, ripping those apart is never a good idea. Now,
Nope.
that is an interesting one as well, that Facebook has 140 layers of context providers because they're using React. I'm out because I've never used React. Dan, what do you mean? What do you think about that? Seems like they're
Yeah,
overcomplicating their own framework.
Yeah, it feels that way. I mean, I'm sure there's a good reason, and it does say, in there that they are kind of granular. So they're doing effectively they're nesting providers inside of providers 140 times. I thought of an instant where I think I've done it where I've used 3 for sort of different reasons, and then I've kind of come to refactor, and I've gone, actually this could just be 1, and then you have that kind of to and from of like, is it better to have multiple where they're sort of more granular control, or just one big mammoth one where I know where it all is. I'm sure somebody would give me kind of a real breakdown of which one's better. 140 though just feels like the Frankenstein's software where it's like, should we just add another one because we've got new features now, and one more won't hurt. I suppose when you get to 139, one more really doesn't hurt, but it does feel totally over the top. But I'd love to know the reasons for it though. I don't know.
I'm pretty sure there is reasons. I mean, Facebook.com is probably not the simplest web application in the world. And, maybe there's non-technical reasons for there being 140, like the organizational structure of the company or what have you, maybe lends itself to having that many context providers. I don't know that this is necessarily too many. I've seen a lot. I've never seen like 3 digits of context providers, but I've seen high 2 digits. And as you said, then the next context provider then is not really that large of a step.
I think my favorite is when it comes to these edge cases when you worked on browsers and you see like the HTTP archive, and I think somebody did a Z index of 150,000 or something at one time, and you like these kind of details, or somebody found out that if you put more than 126 classes on an element, it actually overwrites an ID specificity. And like, what? How did that end up? Was there an endless loop that people didn't realize? Like, how did you end up with 126 classes on one element?
Yeah, I recently ran into the longest possible selector that Chrome can take.
Okay.
And I had to break up some CSS to make it work.
Oh, wow. You really don't know CSS, do you? Like,
or maybe I know it too well, so that I can go to the limit.
Sure. Maybe I'm too intelligent for that stuff. I love this from Anselm Hahnemann here, who we might actually invite as well, because I know him for quite a while as well. There's this T-stack, which is an unfortunate name as well, but it's basically the new technology stack of the German government for new products that they're going to build. And the entire list at the moment is Angular, CSS, Flutter, Next.js, and React. And I'm like, what happened? Like, I mean, to start with, like Flutter, okay, for like mobile stuff, I guess. But Angular and React at the same time, it seems like that's a competing idea, or maybe it's because lots of stuff were built in those and we have to maintain them right now. But I mean, as Anselm points out, like, why isn't HTML, CSS, and JavaScript not even the thing there? Like, was it that people like us didn't speak up in times, or that basically people who are dependent on frameworks realized it? I talked to other people and they said like they have to use React because they want to hire people. You cannot you cannot say HTML, JavaScript, and CSS because nobody applies for the job then. But if you put React in there, people apply for the job. That feels like a very sad situation, doesn't it?
I would like to see the data for this, because if you have this idea in your head, then you probably don't put out any, positions for HTML and CSS developers.
Yeah.
And the other thing, obviously, is, I mean, I can't speak for the government, but I know people who work with one of the many public broadcasters, and they also have a similar sort of tech stack there, where what they would actually need for their webpage, which publishes news articles and videos, would be the most boring old PHP-based CMS that you can think of, and a little bit of jQuery on top. But for political reasons, because I need to get this new project off the ground, they picked Next.js and React, and now that's what's going to happen. There's not necessarily much reason behind this, and probably more, I need to get my promotion.
I need to say the thing that everybody cares about, like, what the hell is that as a logo? That's amazing. Anyways, yeah, that's all the things listed that we have. That's quite interesting. Hugging Face, look at that. And TensorFlow. Okay, so that's all the things that the German government does at the moment. I mean, I like that at least they're transparent about it. So that's pretty cool. I mean, Yeah, but it's interesting to see that.
I mean,
But
I
yeah,
like
from
the I like the idea. I mean, I like that somebody at least tries to catalog what sort of stuff do we want to use, what do we want to migrate away from, what do we want to migrate to have a little bit of consistency across the many different governments, state level, federal level, and so on. This makes sense. I too miss HTML and CSS.
True. I mean, that's basically, but yeah, I mean, React creates things that look like CSS and HTML, so that's something already. But yeah, it's, I mean, the UK government was really good in these things in the past as well. And the last administration, America was really good at it as well, like with the whole F-18 stuff. And then basically a lot of it got shut down later on. And yeah, but it's interesting that these things take time and you really don't know. That's Next.js, not Netscape. Okay, so I was, for a moment, I was like, holy.
Yeah.
Okay. I love this. It's basically a game that is you're a product manager, and it's a choose your own adventure game in terms of scope creep.
That's the thing. It's so polished. Like you can buy like games like this for like $30 or something, and they are approximately as polished. And this just comes for free. Okay, the subject matter is strange for normal people, but still, it works as a game.
Yeah, it
really
feels
does.
like it feels like a Flash game, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now that the sound is playing, we got to move on. I love the idea. There's also at Halfstack, when you go to those conferences, they have the company that of the organizer did this card game that is basically something like that as well, where you got like a feature creep and you got like a scope creep and you have like a top trumps of what not to do in your project. And I found that a really, really cool thing as well. And at the Typo 3 conference, they had these cubes that basically, if something is wrong in your project, you can just roll the dice and basically say like, okay, this is the reason. Type that one in, and it's like blame the core, blame contributors, and so on and so forth. So I found that pretty cool as well. Another thing that I saw lately, so people picking out, is that a lot of people have like things on their page how to actually color them differently and stuff. And this is a piano that you can play on your keyboard actually to switch to the different colors on Josh Ferrand's website. And the thing that I sent to Dan was actually the one from Matthias Ott, and he's going all in about this, doesn't he? Look at that.
I mean, it's so mind blowing. And do you know what I do like about it though is that so I think I sent you it, Chris, where I sort of put all the controls up to 10 or 11, 42. Oh, that's a nice little detail. Jitter goes up to 42. You know, I turned them all up, and I mean, it is just so intense, right? But and at first I was like, I don't know if that's a good idea. You're saying, you know, experienced designer and making the experience really intense. But then I thought, or it's genius because it shows the value of getting it right. That when you realize, turn the sparkle off, make the site, you know, the typography scaling correct, the spacing, then you've adapted it to your own preferences. So I've kind of contradicted myself, but I love it, but it's risky. It is risky.
Well, it's actually kind of a flex. I mean, nowadays you need to build a design system, and it needs to be responsive. And what could be more responsive than this?
Yeah,
very true.
I mean, I had that in the past. I think I wrote, for God, in 2003, I wrote an article about this, how to actually use cookies, interestingly enough, to set your font size to a certain size and stuff before browsers kept that. Like in the Internet Explorer, when you change the font size, when you reload the page, you had to resize the font size again. Like it didn't memorize which site you zoomed in what level, like browsers do nowadays. And I always found like offering a way to change settings is, yeah, it's a cop out kind of thing. Like, okay, you could have done and made it accessible in the beginning, like, but this is a different level, of course, to actually just show off what can be done.
I mean,
I think
and
the
it's
numbers
accessible.
are,
It's totally keyboard controllable and everything.
yeah. And I mean, dial controls always crack me up because they're like proper physical things that basically have a haptic feedback, and people kept doing that. I remember when what was it? QuickTime had the polished metal look, and that the volume control was like a little dial thing that you had to move your mouse up and down on to change the volume. And you're like, that makes no sense if you can't touch it. That was before touch screens, you know? And I remember at Yahoo we had one time we wanted to do a control in YUI called knob, and I'm like, for the English market, just call it a dial control instead, because it's not a good plan. But it's cool that people have these little features in there and play with their websites and actually put these things in there, and I think that makes a lot of sense for them to do. But it's just cool that people have that. I remember when HTML5 came out, and people like Alex Russell and other people on their blogs had all kind of like Easter eggs in the background, like, you know, like canvases that you can paint on, and if you painted a circle, then it gave you extra features. And that kind of love for the detail, I thought it would be fun to see again. But now we have the time to do it, because 90% of the code will be done by AI anyways. But I don't think it will build anything like that for you. Now, tips and tricks, error chaining in JavaScript, claim that debug with error cause. That's what I said earlier, because you got the undefined t-shirt on. I found that really interesting that we extended the error app object to, and the console.error to give us stack data now, and to actually give us the causes for the error as well. And I love that now, because I always tried get people to embrace the debugger, the JavaScript debugger in the browser, and nobody cares. Console log everything, so that much like a printf debugging, because that's how you learned it in coding, I guess. Dan, how about you? Do you use the debugger in JavaScript, or do you use console log everything?
Yeah, I use the debugger, but do you know what? I was going through the article, and we'll show it in a little bit. And you know, when it's kind of got the step through feature, and I was like, that's mostly what I'm using. And I think some of it is that, you know, when you've got something that you know is a fairly simple fix, you're just trying to find it, and then so console logging is quick, and you don't necessarily need that deep dive. But this is kind of a middle ground, right? Where at least now we're getting the calls that I assume that. I mean, where's this come from? Why is it only now that we're hearing about it? It feels like this would have been so useful for the last 30 years.
I mean, you could have had it for the previous years. You would just have to invent your own API for this.
Yeah.
I mean, this has always worked. It's just JavaScript objects. There are no rules. Stick anything on there.
Except when you do that and you override the inbuilt objects, then you can run into compatibility issues if you want to get rid of your stuff. That's what we had when remember that smoosh thing, like when we want to array flatten, when we couldn't use array flatten because somebody's playing with their microphone right now really loudly. Okay. Fair enough. It's gone again. I mean, we had array flatten, and we couldn't use it because of some old JavaScript library that overwrote the prototype, and that would have broken lots and lots of old websites.
Yeah, but you're too much of a real software engineer right now. I'm not talking about extending the prototype. I'm literally saying take the error object and stick something on there.
Now we had other people here who are performance experts, like and I always found the performance tools in the developer tools to be absolutely incredible, but also very, very hard to get my head around, especially with like all the acronyms. And it seems like somebody just basically, instead of using the dev tools, somebody put together like a lot of snippets that you can use in dev tools to make it easier for you. And I found that a really cute idea, just to get snippets in there for people to play with. The other problem, of course, is like, should you trust a snippet just by copying and pasting it in? But yeah, I think it's an interesting way of getting started with that whole subject matter, I think.
The trust idea is interesting. I haven't thought about owning developers' machines via DevTools snippet. That's novel.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I mean, self-XSS has been a thing for a long, long time. That's why people like Facebook, when you open the console, say like, never ever paste anything in here.
Yeah, sure. And you buy up browser extensions to ship your malware. But I've never thought about writing just an article, the 10 best snippets for your React developer experience. Get rid of your context providers or whatever, and then have some malware in there. I haven't thought about this one before. That's good.
Yeah, I've seen it before as well. There's also interesting bits where people what did I see the other day? There was a fake captcha that instead of just saying like, okay, fill in the captcha, it basically asked me to it said I'm send some code into the into your paste bin right now. Paste that into the console to get rid of the captcha kind of thing to prove it that way. And I've never seen something that brazen before. That was just very interesting, and I'm 100% sure that nobody does that even understands what's going on. And people who do, I don't know who the audience is, like who's people who are not knowing what the console is and what code to put in probably wouldn't do it because they wouldn't even find the thing. And people who know about the console probably wouldn't put it in. But like, it's an interesting one.
Well, back in the day, I managed to train my mom to use the dev tools to fix one problem with one specific website that she liked to use. So just delete this guy there. I think it was probably something related to cookie consent banners, and then it works. So
Okay.
regular people, I mean, at least if they, have children that are web developer adjacent, might use this. And of course, if you're a scammer, you can talk people into doing basically anything with their computer.
Yeah, that's true. I found that really interesting. The YouTube embeds are super slow and actually do put a lot of code in there. And Paul Irish has long time ago written light YouTube embed, and this one now basically uses the Shadow DOM encapsulation for the same thing. So it's probably a really good idea to put it in there. And what I'm missing at the repo here is comparisons, like saying like what is the benefit and what the numbers are.
Yep.
But it's pretty impressive.
And it's doubly impressive because it's all vanilla JavaScript. There's no dependencies and libraries in there. I've been trying to, find a good emoji picker and a color picker as web components, and they all bundle some sort of basically framework that blows them up to giant sizes so that every one of them might be usable, but you can't really use 3 web components that all ship their own implementation of, I don't know, signals or what have you. And this guy is all vanilla, and that's really impressive and really the way to go.
Yeah, and it's amazing what browsers do for you if you just spend the effort of going to MDN and looking up and saying like, yeah, this is baseline now. You can rely on it. Like just because somebody wrote an article 5 years ago, it's unsafe to use it. Technology moves on. That's the other thing that's useful there. Cool. We have one new feature on this show that we haven't talked about before, and it's probably, we should have told you before as well, Peter, to actually record something for us. And the idea is that we actually have tech confessions. I found that during my career, I always came up with things
as a developer, I knew I had to find a way around it. Excel is scriptable, so I wrote myself a script that put random tasks in there and emailed it automatically to the product manager at 5 o'clock. I myself left at 4:30 because nobody checked that. That would have been the end of it, but a month later I got a bonus from the company for being the employee with the most amazing timesheet out there. Which goes to show that if you automate things and you don't tell people about it, it might actually be a good thing. When I left the company, I donated the script to my colleagues and everybody was happy ever after.
So, yeah, that was one of the things that I've done in the past. And I guess we all have these stories. And I think it's important to share them, to basically say like that you can have joy and basically poke the bear rather than just being on the receiving end. And yeah, this was just a hilarious bit that basically it's like, seriously, 15-minute timesheets, that kind of micromanagement. I had to do something about that. But I find it fascinating that we get away with these things. And I have a few more to share. So if anybody out there actually wants to share them, just send us a video. We can put it in here and like don't make up stuff. But nobody, and also give it a leeway. I mean, this was like in 1997. So I think nobody will be able to actually catch me now after that. But I think it was just a fascinating idea to make a developer fill in things without actually thinking about that we could automate these bits. Have you done things like automating things that you shouldn't have and not tell people about it, Peter?
I can't say I have. I mean, I've been self-employed my whole life, so there's not many, bosses that I had to appease. But this kind of reminds me of the story that I once experienced when I did a workshop at a company where they actually prohibited their developers from having unit tests because they don't write production code, so that's a waste of time. So what they actually did, they had unit tests, but they hid them in the Windows folder, which I found quite smart.
Okay. Wow. Interesting. Yeah. Cool. So let's talk about more of these topics because you keep talking about like standard HTML, and I love this article as well from Go Make Things where he was just ranting about the just use a button instead of doing a div on click and stuff. I've been saying that for a long, long time as well, but it seems to be it's still a thing that people don't understand that a button is there if you run JavaScript. A link is there if you point to something that doesn't require JavaScript, but could also be functionality of your tool. But people don't use buttons for two reasons, I guess. Like in the past, they were hard to style. And there's also the thing about Safari having to use the button type button to recognize it as a button in the accessibility tree. Although I don't know if that already been fixed already, because in the past it didn't have that role implicitly, like he says here. But in the past we had a problem with Safari with that. But it fascinates me that people still think buttons are slower than divs with on-click events.
Slower?
Yeah. I mean, that was the other thing in the past. Like when you actually had when we started with HTML5 on mobile phones, we had the 200 millisecond delay on any interaction that was not a touch interaction. So when you used the button and you didn't use a click, you waited for the click handler, there was like this 200 to 400 millisecond delay. So that was the other issue why people didn't use buttons in the past. But this is all archaic knowledge that we shouldn't be worrying about anymore. Why do we keep having to explain what's a link and what's a button? Fascinates me.
Well, I have a theory.
Okay. I thought you would have.
And this theory is kind of, most people today, we already talked about this when we talked about, job openings for React developers instead of web developers. I think many people experience web development through like the membrane of one of the large frameworks, Angular, React, and what have you. And I believe that the thing that these frameworks really excel at is at fixing problems from the distant past when they were first developed, where actually just using a button wasn't quite as reasonable because for the reasons you just said, like hard to style, compatibility problems, and so on. So, I mean, it's really easy to get kind of an okay-ish button using a div if you write it using React or Angular or what have you. It's made easy to ignore the existing HTML. So I kind of think that the tools form web developers' perception of reality, and therefore they form the output that they produce.
Mm-hmm. Or it might just be that people don't want to think about it. Like people back started with like vanilla JavaScript, CSS, and HTML, then encountered some issues that they couldn't style it. Then they used a framework that fixed all these things magically. So they said like, yeah, why would I ever go back to that? Not understanding that the platform evolves as well, and these issues become non-issues over time. If you just take a look at like NDN or can I use or these kind of things.
Yeah, but I think if you really wanted to think less, then a plain old button would be the way to go. I really think it's not about picking a tool, but rather applying solutions to what you already have and just using React to add on click and what have you to divs that always work the same, no matter the browser, no matter the circumstances. It's kind of the more obvious solution than to, even think about accessibility and styling and just move this all out of the way by just re-implementing it from scratch. Because what do the browser developers know? I'm building the application. I'm the master of my domain.
Yeah.
Kind of think that's it.
I think you're onto something. I was just thinking then, that I think some of it as well is that you feel like you're not really operating on the platform when you're using something like React. You're working within this React-centric world. So all of the thoughts around like, oh, I should use a button for this reason, go out of the window, because you're kind of detached from it, and it becomes a little bit of the price that you pay for just making everything a div is not that great when you're using React, whereas the price you pay if you're on the platform and you do that, then you're going to have real problems. So it feels like some of the things that the frameworks do kind of cover up our mistakes, and so they just make us unaware that we're doing it. And it's so simple. I agree with you, Chris. It's so simple that in the React world, there's still no reason not to use a button, no matter how much you're using React. It doesn't make sense. It's laziness.
Yeah, I think that being the master of my own domain makes total sense in this case as well. I mean, a long time ago, I gave a talk about CSS versus JavaScript, where I said like CSS is basically where you trust the platform and you trust the browser to do the thing. In JavaScript, you can implement everything yourself. And in the past, we fixed everything on the web with JavaScript because the browser didn't do it and you couldn't do it server side. So people just got into that world and that thinking of like, okay, I fix it with JavaScript because I'm clever enough to do that. But the other problem is that when you do something and implement it with JavaScript rather than using the semantic HTML and the things that the browser comes with, you're also the one that has to make it keyboard accessible. You're also the one that has to make it touch accessible. You're the one to make it focusable and all these bits and bobs.
Are you really? Is this not just some sort of problem that you can ignore?
No, not legally. I mean, it's accessibility, making things like,
Yeah,
I mean,
but
that's of course.
you know what I'm getting at, right?
Yeah, there's your trolling thing going on there. Yeah, it's for sure. But I mean, what's the repercussion if I don't do it? Is another thing that people keep asking. Then, like, and this brings me to this article explaining the accessible benefits of using semantic HTML elements. We've been talking about that for a long time, and we told people just use the button and it's keyboard accessible and it does this and it has all the features in there. I mean, in the past, we also had a lot of articles saying like, yeah, but it's also broken. You have to do this and that, put like extra area states and these kind of things on there. But it's getting in a world where this is finally a thing where we can do it. About 20 years after we told people just use plain old simple HTML, posh, as they called it back then. But yeah, it's trying to get people back into this mindset of saying like, don't think about it because it does it for you. I guess we've been burned too often that we trust it anymore. I don't know.
I just think it's simply a hard sell. I mean, the thing with frameworks really is that they are a parallel universe. I mean, in a technical sense, they live on top of the web platform. But if you think about a developer paradigm, they are actually a competing product. You either do web development or React, in my mind. And if you do React, I'm just bashing React because React is the one framework that I actually know. Don't know anything about Angular, have never written a single line of Vue. I am a recovering React developer, so that's what I know. So this is who's getting the heat. Like React really infests your brain is my perspective. You really get into this state as the basis from which you derive the UI. This is really something that burrows deep in your brain and that you really have a hard time getting rid of once you've been there, because it makes sense on the surface. It just comes with a whole bunch of downsides. But it's really hard to sell people who are living in one universe a new feature on your other parallel universe, because there's a translation cost between the universes. I mean, in theory, you can just use a button in React, but it's made really easy to not use a button. In theory, you can use a native dialog element in React, but this is really hard because the native dialog element isn't really state-powered in the same way that a React component would be. So this is kind of the problem. We have a real divide between web development and framework development.
Yeah, and it goes back to jQuery. I mean, Dan, you started with jQuery rather than plain vanilla, right?
Kind of tinkering with other people's jQuery. It was very much like I was no code. I was using installations of WordPress, so I was kind of figuring it out as I was going. And yeah, I would usually just find some jQuery online somewhere, like a snippet, and copy and paste it in, and then I had no hope of doing anything with it. But yeah, it was over time I kind of started to learn JavaScript. That was very much where I started looking at jQuery, I suppose.
So yeah, we keep repeating the same things. It's kind of funny actually, because you could give a talk about semantic HTML in 2005, and you can give the same talk now, and you still get invited to conferences to keep repeating the same things, because we seem to be forgetting it every 10 years. And maybe you're right, Peter. Maybe it is a lost cause to try to get somebody who's been sold to React from the beginning to actually think about these things, because they consider the web a compilation target rather than a platform.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it's a lost cause. I'm just saying it's really hard for this reason. They are in a completely different headspace. They might as well be developing, I don't know, iOS apps. And now they have to learn everything anew. Everything works differently. Okay, you get to the same compilation target, but nobody cares about that.
Interesting.
And it's hard to make sexy. It's really. You said that you get invited to conferences like you did 20 years ago. I'm not so sure about this, because it's a completely different universe. You cannot really hitch your wagon to your standard React conference or Angular conference. They would benefit from knowing about the semantic elements, but actually getting a paper in there, a talk in there, isn't really all that easy. Trust me, I've tried.
Yeah, that's true. I can understand that. Yeah. Okay, debugging JavaScript, we've been there before, and I think it's an interesting that people do a match detail like that. I wrote a documentation of the dev tools back then to explain to people to do that. And I know how much work goes into this. So this is a really, really interesting way to get started with that one again. And yeah, I mean, it feels overwhelming, but once you actually got into that, then you get there. But then you get into React world where everything is not JavaScript, but actually you have to debug in your own developer tools. So who knows? But in JavaScript, if you want to get started with that, that's a really nice article. That's not part of the official Chrome documentation, but should be, I think.
I think the Chrome documentation probably has a similar page.
Yeah, it does. But I mean, I wrote part of that one, but it feels like it hasn't been updated in a while or something like that. And
discoverability again.
Yeah, that's true. That is an interesting one. We have set HTML coming soon, and the Sanitizer API is coming into browsers as well, which basically means you can it cleans out XSS options and all kind of bits for you. Again, yeah, this is important knowledge that a lot of people don't know about, and I love that it's part of the platform soon, rather than having to use an npm package to do the sanitization or use it on the server side.
And it will probably get implemented in all the big frameworks, so that framework developers too can benefit from this.
Yeah, so that's a really, really important bit, but it also might be slow. That's the other issue with it as well. Like that's where people will say like, oh, I remember when JS lint came out, and people were like, oh, okay, I'm going to write my own JS hint instead of JS lint because it's too strict. And it's an extra step, and it's too slow. And it always fascinated people to find these things. We can, I mean, the big discussions about like using semicolons or not using semicolons, and you're like, really, that the benefit of like not using the semicolon is basically that you have to type less. The benefit of using it is that there might not be any errors that you didn't think of. Like these two things always crack me up, that basically people always find ways around to not have to make things secure.
Yeah.
Don't know, but it's not part of the platform. Cool. I love this, and I think more people should do this. Image, or I don't know, image, I guess you pronounce it. They actually, when they built the platform, which is a self-hosting photo platform, much like Google Photos and stuff, they actually put all the things that they learned, what issues they came into with the bug reports in the platform, and calling all the things curse that actually cause the problems that you might not think of. And I love that people make that, like, show how the sausage is made. and make it in that kind of direction. And I think you can learn a lot from those. Dan, if you take a look at that.
Yeah, I really like that idea actually, because I think that it's the growing pains, right? We say so much of what we see online of people building things now is like this kind of very LinkedIn, like I just gave it one prompt and I built this thing with no problems whatsoever. There's no downsides, everything's perfect. And I like that they've almost done the opposite. They've said, actually, this is a nightmare to build. And even when it looks very simple, you know, I kind of think that you look at what image is and it's, I'm sure, very complicated, but for the user, it displays my photos. Now, I love that you then get like you're saying, the sausage is made. You get a little bit of like a peek behind the curtain of actually how do you get from 0 to something as simple as storing photos, retrieving them, displaying them on a page. Yeah, I think it's great. I think there should be more of this.
Yeah, I'm totally stealing the idea. I mean, if you have somewhat reasonable code, you probably already have this in an implicit way, where you have comments around your crazy workarounds around platform limitations and so on. But just turning this into a page of documentation where people can link to it, where they can find it. I mean, a similar page for Facebook would probably tell us where the 140 context providers come from.
Very true.
Yep. And the next step would be then to actually file bugs with the browsers that you found these things in and make it automatically do that. That would be great as well. Because I mean, the most frustrating thing about working on browsers was always like everybody complains that things are broken, but nobody gives you like a walkthrough how it broke for them. It just says like, okay, like this is broken, fix it. And you're like, well, we can't even reproduce it, so we don't know what the problem is. And that kind of information is gold for the platform providers and for the browser makers as well. Cool. And yeah, I mean, we got 2 more things that basically are, I found that fascinating, the web animation performance tier list. So basically how you can make animations on the web and what the performance problems are and where it is. And I find it interesting that we get insights into how browsers and how the platform works nowadays. But I also find this really tiring to a degree. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's basically an advertisement for this animation framework library thingy that, I don't know, hosts this blog post. But the information is actually really well presented, I feel.
Yeah. And I mean, it's knowing these things is good, but that's the kind of stuff where I'm like, developers should not have to go that deep to have like and it should not be a framework. It should be the platform optimizes a few things for you, but then platforms magically optimizing things for you is something we didn't want to have anymore either. So it's a win-win situation or lose-lose situation in this case. But learning about this, yeah, I think how the sausage is made, I guess they solved a lot of these problems with their framework. And instead of just telling people magically it will fix it for you, explaining it is a good thing.
Yeah, and I mean, it helps you to pick the right trade-off. I mean, if you want to achieve something and you just can't do it because the platform isn't there, knowing all the details at least enables you to, pick the least worst option.
All right. I guess we are at the end of the hour. So, Peter, this was fun. A lot of swearing and these kind of things. Let's see what we can do about this. But it's great to meet you and great to see what kind of insights you had on that. Anything else you want from our audience to actually do that people don't do enough?
Well, if I want something from your audience that people don't do enough, follow me on social media, of course. I'm Sir Pepe at all the platforms, Blue Sky, Mastodon. Find me there and have some more React bashing if you like.
Cool. Any last words from you, Dan, today?
React's not that bad, I promise. Yeah, no, I'd say it depends how you use it. I don't know. Yeah, give React a go and then decide that you hate it, but then turn it into a blog post. And I'd say that is the key to writing good code and good content. I don't know. There you go.
Cool. I realized the other day I have this pub next to my neighborhood, and getting there is 5 minutes, and coming back is 45 minutes, and the difference is staggering.
Oh, it was a subtle punchline.
Yay! Well, thank you very much for watching. This was WeAreDevelopers Live for this Wednesday. We'll be back next Wednesday, which we have a security expert coming on AppSec. So let's talk about what that means and what it doesn't mean. So again, thank you, Peter, for making time for us. Thank you, Dan, and thank you for watching. And we see you later in recordings and clean this up. And lots of beeping, I think, will be done this time. Let's see if we can do that. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah.